I turned these thrown away branches into these beautiful wooden plates. There's a pile of junk lying near my workshop with these thrown away branches of what was once a guava tree. So I wanted to see if I could make something out of that. I brought a few of them back to my workshop and took them to my table saw to cut out 5-inch pieces out of them. I want the color of the wood to show. So after cutting the pieces down to size, I used my chisel to remove the bark from each of these pieces. Now this took a long time, but using my chisel was the best method that I could think of. I squeezed all the wood pieces in this used plastic bucket and then mixed a 2-part epoxy resin along with some black pigment and poured it into this mold to fill in all the gaps. I want to get rid of any air bubbles that may form in the resin. So this time I'm going to let this resin cure in a pressure pot overnight.
So this is my pressure pot. I'm going to cure this batch of resin and wood inside this pressure pot. I've added up to 50 psi of pressure, and I'm going to see how long it takes to cure under this added air pressure.
Next morning I got the mold out, and thankfully the resin wood block had cured with no air bubbles and no gaps in them. I drilled some holes and attached my faceplate to this block and took it to my lathe for turning. On the lathe I'm using a roughing gouge to round over the block first. Carving through this resin wood block is pretty easy, as both the resin and the small branch pieces are not very hard. Once I rounded over the block, I removed some of the excess wood from the top by using a parting tool. Now I had to be careful here because there's some gaps among the wood pieces at the top, and I didn't want my tool to get caught in it.
So I've rounded this resin and wood block. I used small branches here and black color epoxy resin. So now after I've rounded this, I think I can get some small plates out of this. I still have about 7.5 inches in diameter left. So I should be able to get maybe 3 or 4 small plates out of this. So let's see how that looks.
I'm marking out about an inch using a pencil, and then using my skew chisel and parting tool, I carve in a deeper line. The plate will curve towards the bottom, so I'm using my skew chisel and parting tool to do most of the shaping on the outside of the plate.
So that's the outer shape of the plate complete. I'm just going to sand the outer edges to smoothen this out a little bit and then go to work on the inside.
I'm using 80 grit sandpaper to smoothen out the outside shape, and then I rearrange my tool rest to start hollowing out the front of the plate. As I get close to the final shape, I switch to a round nose chisel to run some finishing passes for my wood and resin plate. With the carving work complete, I sand the plate using 220 and 320 grit sandpaper and round over the edges. For the finish, I apply a base coat first, and then I add 2 coats of food safe polish with light sanding in between each coat. So there you go, I carved out the first plate from this block of discarded branches and epoxy resin. I went ahead and carved out 2 more plates out of this block. These plates are a really cool addition to my resin and wood table. My only wish is for next time I would probably make this a little bigger than the size I have here. Well, that's for next time.